Alright guys, welcome back to another video. So, for a number of months now, I've been focused on pretty much highlighting the sort of underwhelming performance of Battlefield 6. Okay, this of course trailed me back to the development team, okay, which I've been asking for some real accountability for. Okay, nothing seems to be going on there. And this of course was completely rerouted, okay, by many of the people in this space, namely the YouTubers, bigger YouTubers with a large following. And then of course you have certain articles pushed by gaming organizations who've effectively done a pretty good job of moving the target away from the development team. Okay, like I've said before, there just doesn't seem to be any accountability with the development team. All blame is shifted to EA as if they're the sole reason we're getting all of these slop games nowadays. And I've highlighted many times, this is not how the system works. These people, this network, they're all part of the same matrix, which is essentially to provide you with false narratives. They're either really extremely stupid, or they're all just part of the same network and they're all being paid to say the same bullshit. That's the biggest clue that you're being manipulated. And this is all part of one big psyop to divert your attention away from the real core issue, which are the development teams in place. But yeah, I'm gonna get into that. Now, essentially I want to take a look at a video. This is basically following the exposing the Echochamber video I made several weeks ago. Today I want to look at TheActMan. I don't usually do this type of content, but again, the narrative is starting to piss me off to the point where, you know, again, I'm planning to take a look at every single fucking YouTuber at this point and just completely expose the narrative, okay? I don't really watch TheActMan's content. I think it's content for dumb people. Much of his takes are just disingenuous. He really blew up with Halo 5. He's fairly critical of that game's performance, but again, failed to critique the development teams in place shitting out these garbage games. And this man just seems to stick his face wherever the wind blows the piss, in my opinion, because this is a fairly late critique and he's just jumped on the bandwagon of BF6 is being ruined by EA, essentially. And I've already broken down multiple times that's just a false narrative.
Battlefield 6 released on October 10th, garnering 747,000 concurrent players on Steam. It became the best-selling game of 2025. This wasn't just the biggest Battlefield launch, but one of the biggest video game launches, shattering records with over 7 million copies sold in just 3 days.
Okay, so yeah, again, these are just bullshit bullet points. Yeah, this argument's been regurgitated many times with pretty much every single channel, okay? They'll highlight the game's massive success, and then they'll go on to tell you that, oh, this game was successful, but for some reason, EA decided to fire everyone. These poor, helpless developers.
About that calculator, Poindexter, because that's, on average, 27 copies sold per second. Assuming the number of sales is exactly 7 million, and that each person purchased the base edition of the game, we're looking at gross revenue of at least $490 million. And despite the game's massive otherworldly budget of $400 million, that still leaves EA with $90 million in net revenue, at least.
Wow, big brain calculations right there. None of it is relevant at this point. So if the game sold well, it hasn't been able to maintain that success post-launch. We're talking about a $400 million budget spent on developing this game with 4 studios behind its development. 5 studios actually. It's 4 studios now. And they've only made a net revenue of 90 million. And despite this game's massive success, it's fallen off hard. Player base is pretty much on a steep decline, and that's due to the lack of content coming into the game. And despite all of these resources, it's failed to deliver on content, and that the output you're getting with this game just doesn't match the investment that's been put into it. The time and resources that you can see here doesn't match the output. Okay, none of that makes sense to me.
Even more impressive, Battlefield 6 is one of only 4 games released since 2009 that outsold Call of Duty in its respective year. And out of these 4, Battlefield 6 is the only title to successfully beat Call of Duty in its own genre.
Call of Duty? Call of Duty? Yes, it sold well initially, okay? Like I've said, BF6 sold well because many shooters on the market today suck, okay? There is a fucking decline in the quality of these games across the board. Like many shooters, including COD. We're talking about Family Guy skins and shit. The game is basically woke slop at this point, and again trails back to the development teams shitting out these slop games. You look at the development team, it's a progressive network of idiots who don't really understand how to make games. They're all autistic people making these games. Okay, BF6, it was initially sold as a grounded military experience, okay, because we couldn't find that in the market today. But that's what your mostly male demographic are looking for, grounded military shooter experiences. That's what this game was promised on, okay? It released, it failed to deliver because it didn't provide the content to sustain the game, okay? It couldn't provide the content because these people don't have the endurance or the capacity to deliver that content. They're very fucking lazy.
By all metrics, Battlefield 6 was a massive success. So you would think only a fool could squander such a golden opportunity. Have you met my friend, Electronic Arts? Folks, I hate to say it, Battlefield 6 has fallen off. At least by the outrageous standards it set. While the game is currently hovering around 50,000 daily active users on Steam, judging purely by the numbers, Battlefield 6 has had an overall player retention rate of just 6.7%. Why does everyone laugh when I say that? And yeah, obsessing over Steam chart numbers never gives the full picture, but this is why I asked if the hype was real for Battlefield 6, because although I found it pretty enjoyable, there was something...
Yes, again, playing retention numbers are piss poor for this game. Yeah, I haven't seen the rest of this video. This is the first time I'm watching this, but I'm again assuming he's gonna fucking jump on this fake narrative bullshit, okay, and he's gonna blame EA for everything. Player retention numbers, again, has been shit because they can't provide the content to sustain this game. Okay, this game released bare bones. Okay, there was no Battlefield DNA in this game at all. Okay, you're talking narrow condensed COD maps on release because this game was made by COD players. Okay, they brought in Vince Zampella and all those COD lab testers. Yeah, they come from that background. Okay, and they were testing this game for months. None of them were providing any real feedback in this space. Okay, Battlefield is about large open environments, except what we got here was a narrow condensed sandbox. It didn't really even have a sandbox. You're talking two maps big enough for jets, no attack boats. It couldn't build on any of that legacy from BF3 or BF4. This isn't a sequel to those games. That's why this game has fallen off hard, okay? But I'm assuming we're about to paint EA as the villain, okay? And all the developers responsible for delivering this content are somehow the hardworking victims who got laid off.
Although I found it pretty enjoyable, there was something missing. It's why I called it a confusing success, because despite all the issues I had, sometimes you just can't argue with the numbers or the results. I had a ton of fun with this game. Recently played a few matches, but didn't really want to play anymore. It felt like a bright flame that went out too fast.
Yeah, we call that exhaustion, okay? Because the maps in this game are dog shit. Again, they're all fucking tiny. Okay, when you're playing on tiny ass maps, that leads to burnout, okay? It's a fast-paced, high-octane mess. That's what they delivered, okay? They planned for this game to be a high-octane, CQC close quarters bullshit experience. Again, none of that shares any connection with Battlefield's DNA. I'm not expecting him to understand any of this because he's just a fucking normie.
Player drop-off happens with most games that break into the mainstream this hard. Just look at Pal World. Speaking of, where are we at in the Pokemon ripoff saga?
Okay, we're only fucking 2 minutes in.
This is just Breath of the Wild Pokemon.
Get to the point, please.
Why did Battlefield 6 fall off? It's undeniable it has. Was its fate predetermined, written in the Elder Scrolls? Could this have been avoided? Or perhaps does Occam's razor slice true once more?
What the fuck does any of that waffling mean? This is why I don't watch this man's content. None of it makes... like it's just waffling. Just to fucking... give me a second, I need to reverse out. Fucking hell. Yeah, this man just waffles horse shit. I don't know why people listen to this fucking idiot.
Battlefield 6 did not and still doesn't have enough content or a robust live service to maintain that casual player base it first attracted. But that's the TLDR version, the simplest answer.
That's the simplest answer, is it? Okay, who even asked for a live service in the first place? This game wasn't marketed as a live service game, okay? But they this development team, this is actually EA and the developers, okay? They wanted to incorporate this live service plan, and yeah, they wanted to have the cake and eat it too, essentially. Okay, so what we got was $90 for a game, and we're getting less content. They can't deliver the content to sustain a live service game, and it shouldn't be a live service game. I've said many times we need to go back to the premium model.
The truth is more complicated. And a better question to ask might be, how the fuck does the studio who made the best-selling game of last year get hit with layoffs?
The oldest reason in the world, money.
All these questions and more will be answered.
Yes, we're about to see him gaslight us. I bet you any money that. They got laid off because they don't need to be there, essentially. Okay, like I said, EA are just skimming off the fat, the excess fat. These people are pretty much useless, expendable. Okay, there's just way too many. This team, this development team, this studio, there's clearly DEI in the studio. I've already showed you all the documentation, the video evidence proving that there's DEI in this development team. There's a 52% representation of women in the company for some dumb reason. Most of the people here, they don't need to be in this game, this development team, because the game's already shipped, it's already been developed. All we need to do now is provide the content to sustain it. That means you don't really need a campaign team working on this game. Okay, and again, all they need to do is create maps at this point, and the content we're getting, there is no maps coming into the game. It begs the question, what the fuck are they doing in this studio? Yeah, so I think we need more layoffs, because a lot more people need to go. There's just no, they're not doing their job. Okay, you don't pay people to sit in the office, you pay people to produce content, and this game desperately needs content.
But before we jump into it, have a look at my wares. Some call this junk. Me, I call them treasures. And if you're a collector and enjoyer of physical media like me, then you need—
Okay, I'm gonna skip through this bullshit because he's just a sponsored shill. He has to make that fucking money.
I've seen many comments calling Battlefield 6 a rug pull. They call him Mr. Bait and Switch.
Okay, yes. I believe this term rug pull was actually coined by Enders. I could be wrong on that. I don't spend enough time looking around on the Reddit or the Battlefield discourse, but this essentially is the idea that EA put all this support behind the game, essentially got all these people in place to develop the game, provide all the assets, all the content, have that ready in place, and then essentially just rug pull everything and pull support for the game and leave the developers hanging and yeah, save all of that content for the next game, which is in development. None of this makes any fucking sense. Okay, if you're a retard, this is the narrative for you. I think personally that is illegal. You're talking about a massive multi-billion-dollar company working on a flagship title. It just doesn't make any logical sense. They've put all the resources, all this time in development it takes. You're talking $400 million budget, 5 studios in development, okay, across 3 to 4 years of development, and all of those policies to support the developers who are spread out across different countries. Okay, so you can't just sack people like that. There's varying degrees of policies that you need to follow, and you need to support your developers. There's also DEI in place to cater to mostly women. Like I said, 52% representation of women in the company. That is a massive support system for the development team. It seems to me like the developers have all the time and resources and the support they need. Okay, but you're telling me just 6 months post-launch, EA have decided to rug pull everything, cut support for this AAA flagship title just 6 months in and work on the next game or whatever. It just doesn't make any fucking logical sense. Come on.
Many were led to believe that lessons had been learned from 2042.
By the 9 divines!
It felt like DICE had looked back at 2042 and said to us,
That was something, right?
DICE and EA definitely wanted to give off this impression that BF6 would be a return to form for the series and the modern military shooter.
Yeah, so 2042 was an absolutely fucking god-awful game, okay? The problem trails back to BF5. That's where this problem began, okay? That's where the development team changed. Okay, we pushed out all the men. We had a new developer coming in, a new development team coming in, a progressive culture taking over. What you saw initially was a lack of content coming into the game. That's where the problem began. BF5 fell off hard. The developer attitudes, I've also highlighted that before. It was all very hostile towards the consumer, okay? And what you got was less content, and that pretty much reoccurred throughout the coming games, 2042 and BF6. 2042 was woke slop, okay? You're talking weirdo customizations. The game was essentially a fashion show. Nothing was grounded at all in that game. The way I see it, that was their game. That was their woke slop. Let them have that game. Again, BF6, it capitalized on the need for a grounded military aesthetic. That was pretty much what the market demanded. COD wasn't providing that. COD has basically mutated into a whack job at this point, like just by woke people. And yeah, a BF6 basically capitalized on that demand for a grounded, gritty military experience. And that's why it sold well initially. And again, they failed to sustain the game with content, and the game has subsequently started to mutate into a whack job fashion show, just like 2042. We're seeing that those themes rearing its ugly head again. That customization, that fashion show, fantasy, silly bullshit that we just hate. Yeah, it's starting to come again in BF6.
We're going for grounded realism. That's what we're all about here. So we have this new skin for sale. I know it's been 2 weeks since the game came out, but we gotta make money somehow. During the beta, many fans also noticed how small the maps were. A lot of fans voiced their concerns, so many that DICE actually responded and assured us that the full game would have much larger maps. This was just a small slice. You know, we chose the smallest map so we could get better data.
Okay, yeah, so this is something I've been focusing on a lot. The maps in the game are tiny as fuck, okay? Nothing about that is a Battlefield experience. Like I've said, goes back to the development team. They come from that COD background. A lot of this game is pulling themes from other games like Rainbow Six Siege, from COD, and it's mutating it together to create Battlefield 6, okay? And ultimately it's forgotten what Battlefield even is. But none of these games have any of that Battlefield DNA. It doesn't complement the sandbox. The sandbox is smaller. Arsenal is smaller. There's no levolution. Fidelity is fucking weaker than previous games. What are we talking about here? This is just a shit experience. Yeah, that's why you've lost your audience.
But then the game came out, and it seemed players were right to be skeptical. Map design left a lot to be desired compared to previous entries, with the biggest problems being their very compact size, how little breathing room there was. A lot of the maps are too symmetrical and don't really fulfill any particular fantasy or war scenario. You pick any map from Battlefield 1, and I think it stands above the selection here. Look at Mount Grappa.
Mount Grappa, you can go back to any other previous game from BF1 downwards, okay? So BF3, BF4, BF1, pretty much were peak Battlefield experiences. Bad Company 2, also an amazing game. BF5, I'd even throw that in there. Unfortunately, it didn't have the content to sustain itself, and that was where the franchise began to fall off. Yeah, ultimately, this experience is a compact, fucking narrow, condensed piece of shit. It's trying to be COD. This isn't the Battlefield experience we were told we were going to get. The developers lied to you, essentially. They told you the game was going to be larger. No, failed.
Mountain Warfare, that's the fantasy. Now, the newest map, Contaminated, is solid, but this game still feels like it's missing that X factor, that secret spice. You know, Battlefield 4 had insane levolution and destructibility. Battlefield 1 and 5 had big operations fighting over battle lines with giant behemoth vehicles that you could not ignore. And even 2042 had its 128 player count to distinguish it from the other games. It's as if the devs felt that having some quiet or slow areas might be too boring for the Call of Duty fans they were trying to appeal to. And I think that is...
Yeah, so they were trying to appeal to a market, a demographic that shared no relationship with this franchise. That's the ADHD neurodivergent people who need that corner camping, corner shooter, condensed environment, exactly like COD. So essentially you've just built a COD game, and yeah, all of that Battlefield history is completely missing. It's like they looked at those games and said, fuck it, we can't be asked. We don't have the energy to create any of that. Okay, so we're not going to do it. Yeah, are we going to blame EA for that? No. Like I said, it's the development team. You can't blame EA for any of that. It goes back to the development team. So can we see some accountability, please?
I think that is reason number one the game fell off. It tried too hard to cater to Battlefield fans. I meant to say Call of Duty fans, but I have permanent and irreversible brain damage.
Yes, I think we can see that. He doesn't truly... I think he just regurgitates fucking talking. This man reads off a fucking screen. How did you get that wrong? Does he truly understand what he's fucking...
Well, that's the second reason. First one's content and map design. It seems that Red Sec was meant to be the X factor, but a battle royale mode, just the design of it has very little to do with Battlefield's core identity. You know, you got two massive armies just smashing each other for control of land. You know, it's a tactical squad-based war game. You know, it's not a scavenger hunt for supplies and resources. So Red Sec was clearly envisioned as a competitor to Call of Duty's Warzone. And here's where we start to see the main problem. Battlefield 6 tried to compete with Call of Duty on every front. Core multiplayer, PvE, and Battle Royale.
Okay, so here's the thing, okay? Battlefield's core mechanics are fine, okay? The gameplay loop is fun. That's the only positive coming out of Battlefield 6 at this point, okay? Multiplayer experience is fine apart from the maps. The maps alone take this game from a possible 8 to a fucking 5. Okay, the maps are the core issue, okay? If they released 7 large-scale maps tomorrow, it would pretty much be a decent game. I think you'd bring back a certain portion of the community, but they're not doing it, okay? The development team have said, we're not going to sacrifice quality for content, and we know what their quality is, and it's horse shit, okay? Now, Red Sec is a really good experience. I think it's a really decent battle royale mode. Yeah, I think they really did a good job with that. Does it really take away much from the core experience? Not much. It's a mode. It's a very entertaining mode. I think it's a positive addition to the franchise. And they delivered a few months after release, I believe. Yeah, it was a solid experience. And again, I've said multiple times, they could have done more with the maps from Fort Linden. You could take that and you could put it into the base game, some of those environments. Area 22B, the marina, downtown. They will play absolutely amazing in this game, but the development team aren't doing it.
The thing is, they were successful. They actually stole the COD audience who came for the multiplayer, and all you should have done is hook them on what makes Battlefield special. You see, that's what all those people bought the game for, was the core multiplayer. Instead, for whatever reason, Red Sec was given priority, and it took away resources and time that might have been better spent on improving the core multiplayer.
So yes, players were pretty much in outrage that Red Sec seemed to have more in common with that Battlefield DNA compared to the multiplayer core experience, the multiplayer base game. As you've seen, Red Sec has some destructibility there. There is some form of what you could connect to Levolution. I've said that experience right there, you could take that and just put it into the multiplayer. I don't know why the fuck, but you have to understand, four studios were creating this game. Okay, the studio that created Red Sec were a completely different studio compared to DICE, DICE in LA, who made the multiplayer portion of this game. Okay, so I think we need to get this Red Sec developer working on the multiplayer. Okay, they obviously understand what to do. Okay, the multiplayer spaces they've made here, it's completely two different architects. Okay, there's two different level designers making the multiplayer maps here. Red Sec is a lot more breathable, and you get a much more grounded, fun experience here compared to DICE's multiplayer, which is a condensed, fast-paced, high-octane mess that's just leading to burnout. It's okay to have a few maps like that, but not 98% of your fucking multiplayer.
Also tied Red Sec to weekly challenges, which made people feel like EA was pushing fans away from the style of Battlefield game that they wanted to play in favor of this shiny new Battle Royale. I think the fast-paced close-quarters combat drew in many people, but it wasn't the complete package of what hardcore Battlefield fans wanted, which realistically is just a spiritual successor to Battlefield 4.
Yeah, I think he's just throwing in buzzwords there. This game was not a spiritual successor at all to BF4. It's quite the opposite. Yes, that's what we wanted. This game was nowhere near that.
When it comes to Portal, EA had promised that this mode would be a chill place for players to grind XP against bots with access to the full progression trees. But there's too many bot farms, so you all suffer reduced XP gains now. Also, don't you dare try to recreate maps from other FPS games and play them in ours. Who do you think we are, Valve? Portal is an ambitious feature, sure, but as far as I'm aware, the quality of it has only been nerfed since launch. And that's the opposite of what you expect from a game that's trying to be a live service.
Okay, so Portal mode, massive disappointment right there. Okay, you're talking about a fucking mode which requires you to use a third-party tool to download the fucking software, install that software, and then you have to navigate this really complicated UI to develop these maps, which I'm not even sure you can create your own terrain on, or even place all the assets you need to create a proper map. It's like they didn't learn from Halo's Forge mode. Something like the Far Cry Instincts map editor would have really massively innovated this game. Just the ease of use right there would have massively benefited this game. Yeah, unfortunately we got this really complicated system right here, and fuck knows why they used it.
No part of Battlefield 6 really feels like it has improved since I last played it. Granted, it's still like, it's not a bad game. I think it's great. But I do feel like my expectations were not met, especially compared to how other live service games are being handled. Like, Arc Raiders came out around the same time and has a much more consistent player base. Even Helldivers 2 is still going strong with all the updates and content. And it certainly doesn't help when EA has to delay Season 2 content. It just seems like EA's strategy revolved around stealing or siphoning off as much of COD's audience as possible, a fan base who has been pretty disgruntled with recent games and looking for something new. Then, when they succeeded, EA was like, alright, well, let's just give them more COD. No, they came for Battlefield! This game had to destroy Call of Duty. And it seems EA bit off more than they could chew.
Yeah, so essentially this live service strategy here doesn't work with a AAA military shooter, okay? It didn't work for Halo. I don't know why we keep fucking forcing it in our AAA games, okay? This is obviously because they've seen the success of Fortnite, games like Fortnite, and they're trying to replicate that with these military shooters. Ultimately, what that means is more heavy monetization, more microtransactions, and ultimately that means the development teams are shitting out these weirdo, wacky fantasy customizations. Game often looks like a fashion show, and it always seems to lean into fucking neon cyberpunk themes. Again, reflective of the culture making these games. If we tried to implement a live service back in the day, like 10 years ago, where we had a patriarchal system making these games, behind these games, I think more or less you'd see a more grounded, realistic approach. There's tons of things you could do in terms of customization to support BF6 and still keep it grounded. There is just no fucking reason why the game needs to have bright blue-skinned operators that completely stand out from the environment. Weirdo customizations that are completely disconnected from any military themes. But yeah, EA, obviously, they've tried to implement a live service system, okay? And that's just for them, that's just them trying to be greedy and trying to capitalize on the market.
Battlefield 6 is the victim of unrealistic expectations and an unhealthy amount of investment. The budget ballooned to over $400 million. Like, to put into perspective how ridiculous that is, there are only 5 movies in existence that have ever had a higher budget. Like, this is just stupid. Why would you put that much money in?
Okay, you're not about to tell me you haven't seen, as a fucking video game journalist, whatever the fuck this man is, a content creator who focuses exclusively on games. You're not about to tell me you didn't see Halo Infinite's development budget, which was a $500 million budget, and all of the other games, AAA live service slop that we've been seeing over the course of many years, of course, have similar, if not larger budgets. We're talking about Halo Infinite with fucking almost, I think, 8 years development cycle at this point, $500 million budget. BF6 was developed in 3 to 4 years, $400 million budget. Still, you have a lack of content. And much of the engine was recycling from previous games, recycling mechanics. How much effort actually went into building this game from the ground up?
Regardless, we're not in control of these decisions. And if you're a corporate guy who's funding this and putting this much money in, you expect to get a return.
Oh my goodness, he's just gonna, oh my goodness. Yes, so AAA games take that much to build now. Yeah, and he's just completely ignored the fact that other AAA games cost the same amount of money. In fact, they cost more today than they did about a decade ago. And guess what? We were producing higher quality games over a decade ago with less money, with less manpower. So you had less people on the job, okay? And we didn't have 4 studios developing one game. We didn't have DEI, and it sure as shit didn't cost $500 million budgets to develop these games. Okay, so quality's gotten worse, content has gotten worse. Are we going to look at the development teams, the structure behind these games? No, we're not.
Now, what were EA's goals again? EA reportedly expects Battlefield 6 to have 100 million players.
Yeah. Are you high right now? What?
It's Dr. Evil numbers.
$100 billion.
Yes, it's completely ludicrous that they expected to have that much, so I have a suspicion that they are equally as tone deaf as the development teams, okay? Completely unrealistic. Even the developers themselves said, yeah, you need to temper your expectations, if you remember that, because they knew that they couldn't deliver this project on that sort of scale, okay? They don't have the capacity to even meet those targets. This game didn't have enough content to meet those targets, okay? So that's screaming to me that there is a massive disconnect between the developer and the publisher.
Dude, Mr. Beast doesn't even get 100 million views on each one of his videos. Like, what? You're talking insane numbers. Now, here's the thing. Their game plan could have worked. We're making a faster Battlefield. You see, you can have a faster Battlefield game with a vibrant PvE mode, a solid campaign, and a battle royale. I don't think the strategy is the problem, but it's like the motivations behind it. You have to start from your base. If you want to branch out and appeal to Call of Duty fans, then you at least got to give the core fans that experience they're hoping for. Here's the thing,
Yeah, it's not like they couldn't do it. They could have gotten really close. This is the biggest selling game in Battlefield history. It definitely outsold COD. Could have competed on... Essentially, it was released on many platforms. It just didn't have the content to sustain it. That's essentially what ruined the game.
100 million players is so unrealistic. What does that do to the devs?
You better make this much money. It's a completely absurd amount. It's 3 times higher than the best-selling game in the franchise, but you've got to do triple.
Now, despite all of the criticisms of Battlefield 6, like, it still has a very solid player base. Look, if you're not happy with 50,000 people, like, playing your game at the same time, I feel like any developer would be happy with 50,000 people playing their game, like, 6 months after release. And with the right updates and content, maybe a shift in focus, I bet loads of people would come back to this game, and it could easily stabilize with a player count of 6 digits. So what is EA's latest game plan to strengthen Battlefield 6?
Yes, it's pretty obvious at this point. You need to have the content to sustain this game, okay? If they, like I said, if they release 7 maps tomorrow, I think, and these were really high quality maps, which catered to that large scale warfare, open combined arms gameplay. Like I said, if you bring back boats, attack boats, open oceans, focus on naval warfare, I think you could bring back a significant portion of this audience, but this development team can't do it.
Battlefield 6 was the biggest launch in franchise history. 6 months later, EA is laying off the people who made it. What's that? Layoffs? Don't talk about layoffs? You kidding me? Layoffs? I must have had something in my ears. Come again, Noble One. Did you say layoffs?
You heard that correctly.
EA has confirmed that an unknown number of employees have been laid off from the studios that made the game, including Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive. Battlefield 6, more like Slaughterhouse 6.
I don't know why he circled back to this fucking bullshit argument. Okay, yes, the game sold well. It hasn't... This team couldn't support the game with content to maintain the game, so it fell off. Simple as. Okay, if they can't do their job, they need to do more layoffs.
So clearly there's like no way to justify this or
If you go to a fucking restaurant and they sell you shit food, they deserve to be fired. I'm sorry. Okay, why is it different here? I'm not understanding. Yeah, you got 4 studios working on the game. How are you not meeting the output? I don't understand. Come on. 4 studios, man. And it's not like they're not a limited fucking... They don't have limited people in these studios. You're talking over 100 people in each of their fucking studios, man. I could make maps myself. Like, there's people in the community, like fucking 17-year-olds, making large-scale maps, man. It doesn't make any sense.
So clearly there's like no way to justify this or
Yeah, there isn't, okay? I'm not letting you guys go on this, okay? It's the development team. Okay, don't fucking tell me EA are responsible for the lack of content coming into this game because they've rug-pulled everything. Get the fuck...
and this is the funny part where we have to read exactly that corporate statement. Here is EA's official statement. We've made select changes within our Battlefield organization to better align our teams around what matters most to our community. I can't even do that with a straight face. We're doing these layoffs for you guys. This will better align our fans in our community because one of the biggest complaints was the lack of content, and by getting rid of people, we'll be able to make content faster.
Okay, like I've said, this makes perfect sense, okay? To these people, these autistic people, like TheActMan, they don't understand it, okay? This is a AAA flagship title. You have 4 studios working on the game, currently, each with over 100 developers, okay? If they're not doing their job to sustain the game with content, some motherfucker needs to get fired. I'm sorry. Like, that's just not good enough. If you go to a restaurant, okay, which used to be great, okay, all of a sudden you start noticing the food starts getting shit. You take a look at the chefs and you start to realize, okay, there's a lot more women here. Something's not right. What's going on? Okay, I'm not getting the quality I used to get. I'm not getting there's not enough substantial amount of food here on my plate. So what's going on here? We need to start laying people off, essentially. If you're not doing your job, you need to leave. I'm sorry. And that's how the real world works, okay? This is EA skimming off the excess fat. I believe they need to get rid of more people, okay? Because this is just an overbloat at this point. How much money are you wasting on these people just to sit in the fucking office? Okay, you got to feed and you got to feed these people. What are they doing? They're not doing any work. They're not producing enough content. What we're actually getting is substitutional shit, okay? Where they're providing racing events with cute and cuddly names, okay? They're taking maps, remakes from past games and providing that as real content for the future going forward for Battlefield in Season 3. That's not real content, okay? Much of the real content on this game is substitutional. Again, it's really small, completely lacking in DNA, Battlefield DNA, okay? And then again, they're remaking maps almost in every update, it seems. The base game, remake of Firestorm. Why? And it's smaller. Why? And then season 2, you've got Mount Contaminated, inspired by Mount Grappa. And then again, Season 3, more remakes. I'm sorry, but the content strategy here is completely pathetic and it does not meet the output. Okay, so this culture is completely, they just don't have the capacity, okay? It signals to me these people are weaker than what we used to have. And for some reason, people cannot defeat this argument, okay? Because they know I am right on this.
Just so we're clear, crystal clear as Walter White's meth. You're laying off people from the teams that released the best-selling game of 2025 to better serve the community that made it the best-selling game of 2025.
Yes, to better suit us, because they can't, if they're not doing their job, they deserve to go. Simple. Simple mechanics right there. I don't know how you're not getting it.
But you haven't been serving the community already. It's not even worth pointing out the stupidity of the statement. It's the action itself. Like, Battlefield 6 got the gold medal. Is there anything better in a game industry than, like, best-selling game of the year? Imagine Bill Belichick going up to Tom Brady after the end of the 2007 season where they went 16-0, and he's like, yeah, Tom, it's just not working out. What? But I threw 50 touchdowns this season. Yeah, but you didn't throw 51 now, did you? And
yeah, completely disingenuous take. Stupid framing right there. That's not near enough the same equivalence as what's happening right here. What we're getting is a team who are failing to do their job. That player right there, he was succeeding. Okay, he doesn't deserve to be fired. This analogy doesn't work.
That's just crazy, man. Again, if you run the numbers over the first 3 days of its launch, Battlefield 6 was literally making $347 per second. Net revenue, not gross. I mean, who knows how much money they would have made by the time this sentence ends, right?
See, this is what TheActMan does. He repeats the same arguments multiple times, like 20 different times over the course of like these 20-minute videos he makes.
I'm not happy with that. I didn't make enough money. Game doesn't sell, layoffs. Game does sell, layoffs. We lay them off and then we hire new people to make the sequel. Your team is not efficient, layoffs. Right away, straight to layoffs. Your team is too efficient, believe it or not, also layoffs. I really am getting tired of this disgusting trend of treating like such highly talented people as disposable pawns, right?
Highly talented people, wow. The people who cannot provide the content to sustain this game. The people who provide a bare bones mess on release. The people who do not want to sacrifice quality for quantity. And that quality is horseshit. The whole thing is disingenuous, lying, bullshit framing.
It's like all of my favorite studios and the games that they produced, they've all been eviscerated by corporate greed and layoffs.
No, it's not corporate greed. It's DEI, okay? They're trying to force in DEI, and the DEI can't get the job done, so everything's failing, okay? And these games aren't great games, okay? Yes, they sold well initially. Like I said, people bought into that grounded military aesthetic. They thought this game was going to be that return to form. It wasn't. It was a lie, and the development team couldn't sustain the game with content going forward. Same problem since BF5, actually.
To the point where companies like Blizzard, DICE, Bungie aren't really recognizable to me anymore, or at least
Oh my goodness, did you see those fucking...
I don't feel like the company culture is the same. I mean, it's like...
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's not the same, okay? You've got weirdos in there now, okay? You have to name them by pronouns and shit. That is not a culture you want working on these games. There is just no masculinity in these. There is no testosterone in these studios anymore, okay? So when there is none of that, you don't have the endurance to push these games forward, okay? These teams don't have the strength to do this fucking job. I'm sorry. This is a weaker development team, a weaker culture navigating these franchises into failure, basically.
Or a product flops spectacularly. You know, they laid off people at Wildlight before shutting down Highguard. The real reason for these layoffs is that EA is potentially getting acquired by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund for $55 billion. What happens when companies get acquired or merge? Layoffs. They want to cut staff to appear lean and efficient to make the purchase and acquisition look better. See how smooth?
That's all bullshit right there. Okay? That has nothing to do with why they've laid off the people in this game. Okay? That's just a business deal. I need to look more into the context of this Saudi purchasing of DICE, EA, whatever the fuck it is, going forward for Battlefield and what that means for the future of this franchise. It could potentially be a good thing. It could potentially mean that they're getting rid of DEI policies. We'll have to wait and see what that means. But yeah, don't let this guy lie to you. That is completely disingenuous framing right there.
It's kind of like saying, yeah, I lost 10 pounds. Oh, that's great. And then you see a picture of this person and they're basically anorexic. I think it's pretty clear that the reason Battlefield 6 fell off is also due in part to how it was managed, what the expectations were, and now that they're being put in a position where I think it's the juxtaposition of massive success still resulting in mass layoffs. Like no bar is your job safe if you work in a...
Yeah, that's the one point that's all he can see. And that's just a point that's been regurgitated to him over and over by the media, the discourse. None of it's true, okay? It's all part of this matrix to confuse the average person. And then again, get you to believe EA, this faceless company, are the evil problem at this point. That's not how this goes, okay? EA are just a publisher. The development team are responsible for developing the game. They're the ones on the ground creating everything, okay? They've chosen to create less in this point, okay? And you're getting a shit game. Product inferior to previous games.
It's like no bar is your job safe if you work in the video game industry and you're not in a management position, right? And think of like the mental toll that has on someone. Could you go to work every day and just be chill without having any sense or feeling of job security? The number of times I've had to bring up the Satoru Iwata quote is staggering, but it really shows the difference in culture between like Japanese game developers who, you know, are all honor bound and Western game developers who could not give a shit if you generated billions of dollars.
Yeah, the thing is, we used to operate on morals, honor, and integrity to our franchises when we were under a patriarchal system. Okay, you look at many of these Japanese studios, they don't have fucking progressive DEI cultures making their games, and you see mostly men in these environments. If we look at something like War Dogs today, you still have mostly a male demographic making those games. It's a mostly patriarchal system there. They understand what they're creating, and War Dogs genuinely looks like an interesting, dedicated project made by passionate developers, okay? They understand what they're doing, they understand what they're making, and they're trying to innovate the game. And that's a double A project, okay? We're seeing a lot of that today. Indie games, double A games are doing a lot better in terms of player engagement compared to triple A games. Triple A games, the culture are progressive. You typically see these weak, emasculate, fucking soft, pudgy men, these simps, and then you have a 52% representation in this case of women in these companies, in these studios, okay? And that culture making the game is an inferior culture. I'm sorry. They just do not have the energy to deliver these games, and the testosterone, and they don't operate on fucking morals, okay? They will blatantly tell you to your face. They'll lie to you. They'll just continuously gaslight you all the time. Come up with excuses for why they can't do their job. It's like the whole DEI thing with the fucking LA wildfires. That you had that female lesbian firefighter who refused to go in, who basically said he got himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, and she refused to go and help the person in the fire. Same shit, guys.
For the company, it's like, what have you done for me recently? If we reduce the number of employees for better short-term financial results, employee morale will decrease. I sincerely doubt employees who fear that they may be laid off will be able to develop software titles that could impress people around the world.
Yeah, basic, logical common sense right there, okay? That's a publisher or a company or whatnot who wants to improve their games going forward, okay? And look, it's a man. No shit. This is the sort of honor, integrity, and morals that you need in charge of your projects going forward. Okay, you don't get that with modern AAA games coming out from these progressive environments today.
World. Why did the developers of Highguard at Wildlight make Highguard? Because they were sick of working under EA. At a certain point, these companies will just bleed through the talent that created the magic. I mean, looking back, it's still silly that Tango Gameworks was shut down by Xbox after they produced an award-winning, critically acclaimed Hi-Fi Rush. But now, even being the most profitable game isn't enough. Nobody can win. I'm the CEO. I need all the money. Speaking of losing top-tier talent, one last thing to mention is the tragic death of Vince Zampella, who died in an avoidable car accident. That must have had a huge effect on DICE's morale and just the feeling in the studio overall.
Yeah, it's terrible. Vince Zampella, he was caught speeding outside of a tunnel with his Ferrari or whatnot. He's lucky he didn't ram into the cliff and cause a massive Levolution event or some shit. That being said, it is a tragedy. Do I think he was the best fit for Battlefield going forward? No. Much of his direction was actually the cause of this game's failure. Yes, massive success on release, but that's not because of Vince Zampella. He actually was pretty much responsible for designing this high-octane mess that we find ourselves in with this franchise. And of course, the people around him, the whole circle, the network of that COD, that COD mindset is essentially why this game sucks.
But perhaps because of his status and legacy and position, it could be that he was able to shield DICE from some of EA's more unscrupulous ideas.
Yeah, like I said before, great legacy. He worked on the COD games, Titanfall 2, great games. Many of those OG COD games, absolute legacy titles right there. But this is an entirely different project, and I don't necessarily think he was the best fit for this franchise. But great guy right there. Absolute tragedy, he passed away.
Why did Battlefield 6 fall off? For a variety of reasons. Number one, EA overinvested in this game, overpromised, set expectations way too high, and after they undelivered, they said, well, let's cut our losses. They tried fighting a war against COD on all three fronts and failed to take advantage of the huge momentum swing they had at launch. You could easily assign DICE to blame and the other studios who worked on Battlefield 6 for simply not delivering a robust live service. But I think the devil's in the details. Why couldn't they?
Very disingenuous framing right there. Okay, again, it's completely ignoring the DEI that not only are the developer compounded by, but also the publisher, okay? That's all that this whole progressive framework don't know what they're doing, essentially.
But I think the devil's in the details. Why couldn't they produce a robust live service? Battlefield 6 catered to a casual audience and not the hardcore Battlefield fanatics. And now it appears EA is shedding all of the talent that created the first-person shooter game in 18 years to dethrone Call of Duty. Will lessons be learned? Will upper management be fired at some point? Probably not. It's unfortunate. You know, I wish the best for them and for Battlefield 6. I might still play it occasionally, but just gotta make more content. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts on
Yeah, so essentially none of that even remotely touched on the development teams responsible for developing these games. Okay, just completely disingenuous framing right there. You're blaming EA, the management there, and what they've done is they've conveniently tied this man's face to it to give someone the blame. And all that man is trying to do is protect his development teams, okay? That's all this narrative is supposed to do, really. Shift any target away from the development teams. And they don't want you to look at, they want to shift all accountability, all the blame away from them. And yeah, it's just the same cycle there, guys. But yeah, that's the video for today, guys. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one.
Take what you can carry.